Yeah, we see this. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks everyone. I mean, I'm really happy to be here. Obviously, Sumbul, thanks for the invitation, and I'm really glad, that you all are kind of taking time out of your weekends. I'm sure you guys have really busy weeks as well, and taking time out over the weekend to kind of learn more about sustainability, learn more about various nuances within sustainability. I will be talking to you about a career in consulting, etc. So I'm really impressed already, even though I haven't, spoken to all of you yet, but really impressed already. So kudos to all of you. Reminds me of myself when I was, I don't want to give my age away, but maybe let's just say 10 years ago, this is how I was as well. But in general, so I'll go through the presentation. But if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt in between. I'm okay if you interrupt me. I don't think I can see if you raised your hand because of my screen sharing thing. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Or if you want to leave it for the end, that's okay as well. So, a little bit about me. I have been in the ESG space, not purely in consulting, but I've been in ESG for about 13 to 14 years. I've always been in this field as, per se, but, for example, I did my master's in sustainability from the University of Leeds in the UK, moved on to work as an intern and, analyst, etc., in London itself for UNPRI. So UNPRI, which is United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment. This is an organization which obviously exists even now, and they are kind of the sort of the nodal organization which kind of pushes its signatories like institutional investors, pension funds, etc., to improve on their sustainability performances of their investee companies, right? So the reason I got into the space into ESG was the power or the role financial institutions have to drive impact and to drive change through their money and through their investments in some of these portfolio companies, etc. So having worked in the UK for about 2 3 years, I moved back to India, worked for, I particularly have been only in the FS space, so financial services space. So I moved back to India, worked for organizations like Aditya Birla Capital. I worked for a startup which had an ESG fund called eCube Investment Advisors. Before EY, which was about a year and a half ago, before that, I was with CRISIL. So CRISIL Ratings at the time was launching an ESG ratings product. So as you know, CRISIL is a credit rating company, but at the time they were, even now, they have an ESG rating product where we rated, top 1,000 listed companies in India, across I would say 200 sectors or so, right? So that is CRISIL, and then I moved on to EY. I've been in EY for about a year and a half now. But in snippets, I was also a UNDP consultant, and I was also a freelance writer, etc., for an Italian, news site. So news sustainability website, basically. So that's pretty much my profile. um, and the reason I got into consulting, maybe just off the bat, I would say, consulting kind of offers you the opportunity, or really the privilege to work across diverse, diverse clients, diverse problem statements, diverse situations, and for a consultant, that's pretty much the name of the game, right? So you might be today working for a bank, tomorrow you might be working for an NBFC, on the same day you might be working for both the clients. So it's a very, very fast paced, very, very diverse, almost always a war room type of situation. And our goal really is to, solve the problem for the client and or make the client look good, right? So that's essentially from the reason why I moved on to consulting. Because in India especially, a lot of the great work between on sustainability and on ESG and on climate change, a lot of the great work is happening at the consultant level, because our clients, some of these corporates, some of these institutions, are still coming up the curve in terms of their sustainability practices and their performance. So, as consultants, it is our job to kind of help them and support them and bring them up the curve, such that they are, leaders amongst their peers, both domestically as well as globally. So that's pretty much why I got into consulting. And maybe I'll open the room for some interaction. So off the top of your mind, does anyone want to talk, maybe give a short answer of what do you think consulting is according to you? Anyone wants to volunteer? I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I can't see.
Yeah, guys, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to make it interactive because I'm not going to stop until I get at least three answers.
But I'm speaking from experience. This
Hi.
is true. Please talk. Yeah.
Hi,
Yes.
hi. So, okay, let me make this easy. Let me give you first response. I believe consulting is essentially what I understand is that providing your expertise on a subject. And as a consultant, I believe that you do have some sort of, a niche area or or basically a combination of skills that's not that makes you necessarily kind of not you I won't say irreplaceable, but unique, who's somebody out there in the market. And there could be very different kind of consultants. It's not just that, even within same space, different kind of consultants could hold different kind of put angles to them and some sort of a specialization, I would say. That's what I understand.
Okay, so to summarize, essentially what you're trying to say is consultants are generally people who have either a holistic experience or like a generalist kind of experience or a technical niche kind of experience, and clients pay them essentially to help them get a service or a solution that they can't essentially find for themselves, right?
Yes, I believe so. That's what I
Great.
understand. Yeah.
That's a great answer, Darshana. Thank you for that. Anyone else?
I can go next. So,
Yeah.
consulting from my idea is basically advising companies or corporates on a problem that they are facing, but it's from a third party perspective. So, it's an objective opinion or an advice that the consultants give to them.
Great. That's great. Thank you, Ishita. Anyone else for a final answer before I
Yes,
show my? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
from my understanding, maybe matlab, consulting means providing expert advice and guidance to client, typically in businesses to help them solve problem and improve performance. I think that's it.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much, Priya. Dhruv, you were saying something.
So most of these people answered most of the qualities that we have, but I like to add another point, which is consultants generally add a lot of speed to what the company wants to do. Like if the company has a different culture, if they might take 12 months for a project, consultants bring in their culture and get it done in 4 to 6 months. And that's another reason people hire them.
Great. Thank you so much. So I will move on to my presentation and yeah. So essentially, what do we do? So I think all of y'all have is are bang on. You've hit the nail on the head. Essentially, what do? We help, we advise, and we solve. There could be other permutation combination to these words, to these services, to the solutions we offer to the client. But essentially, these are on a very broad level. These are the things that we offer to the client. Usually what happens is the client, the reason they pay us to do their job is either they don't to do something for them, is that maybe they don't have the right resources to do it. As Dhruv said, they may have the resources, but they may not have be able to do it as in a faster manner like consultants can do. They pay us to give our opinion, give our objective opinion, to give our analysis to a particular problem statement that they may have, to give an analysis comparing the market, looking at the market, what are their peers doing, what is competition doing, etc. We bring it all together and offer an analysis or a assessment to the client, which essentially helps the client to either invest better or strategize better or perform better, right? So in general, the goal is in consultancy and in any kind of hospitality industry, you would always listen to this phrase that the client is the god, the customer is the god, etc. So here for us as consultants, and if you whenever you come into the consultancy field, what you need to know is your client needs to be your main kind of persona, the main actor which revolves, which your life revolves around. And essentially there are obviously, its client is not always right. There are all these kind of scenarios as well. But the idea is we get paid by the client needs to get a good result, good outcome through our work, and all of this is to either solve their problem and in general at the end of the day make them look good in front of their peers, in front of their senior management and their leadership, and in front of the market and their customers, right? So this is what we do as consultants. Now, what does the typical day in the life of a consultant look like? Now, I'm assuming a lot of you are already in the workforce. You all have, maybe done some internships or are currently already working. So a lot of these things in general, in a corporate life look very similar. But generally, the aspect that I mentioned to you very early on as a consultant, we have to do multiple tasks, sometimes within the hour, sometimes within the day, etc. So it's very, very important to organize your day. So calendar management, both from an internal stakeholder point of view, so with your teams, with your manager, with your partner, etc., as well as the external calendar management, right? So if you have a client meeting, how do you manage your time, how do you manage your bandwidth, etc., etc. So very, very important to at the start of the day, obviously, to calendarize your day, schedule your tasks, ensure that you are on time, where you have to go, how much time it will take you to reach there, etc., right? So calendar management becomes the number one thing that if you get that right, and if your organizational skills, your time management skills is bang on for that particular task, your 50% of your day is going to go smoothly. In general, as a consultant, you may be on typically 3-4 projects at one time. So what happens in such cases is that you need to ensure that your team, so you may be a junior person, you may have someone much more junior than you, like an intern, or you may have someone just one level higher up. So it's important as a team that you get together and you get kind of guidance from your seniors, your project leads, etc., to what you need to prioritize for the day. So daily huddles with the team becomes a very, very important task that you do at the start of the day. Of course, a big part of a consultant is client visits, meetings, so face-to-face interaction with the client. Mostly, even at a junior level, at an early stage, at a starting of your career level, you will get a lot of opportunities to interact with the clients, to talk to the clients on a face-to-face level. So there will be a lot of client visits, a lot of meetings. It may be within the city, outside of outside of Bombay, nationally, etc., etc., right? So client visits and meetings become an important part. Then obviously these things chronologically can change depending on the day, but a very important part of your day is also the actual execution, right? So you may meet the client, you will do your calendar management, you will talk to the team, etc. But it's obviously, the actual project involves the execution, doing the actual analysis, doing the research, and giving that research back to your project lead for their review and feedback. So this is essentially the crux of your entire day. That which means that if you get this right, and if you're well organized here, and you're giving good quality of work, such that your project lead doesn't have to have a lot of back and forth to change certain things within your project or within your deliverables, then things go much more smoothly. Finally, once your execution is done, your research report is ready, for example, then you have to present it to the client, right? So then it's important to have good communication skills, good presentation skills, good sales skills, because essentially you are selling your work to the client, and the client needs to buy into that, right? So they need to be okay with whatever you have presented. If they have feedback, you may need to incorporate that, etc., and get their buy-in and get their approval. Because at the end of the day, if the client doesn't buy in, you're not going to get your money. And obviously, this is a business. We need to raise our invoices, etc. So once the client says that, okay, this is a deliverable that is good to go, then as consultants, as a consultancy firm, we raise our invoices to the client. In general, so this is a working day. And in general, once your working day ends, a lot of consultants, whatever level you are, but this is typically very common amongst slightly more senior people, that after a working day, there's always some time that we need to give towards networking and selling, right? So there is always potential to get new clients, to get new opportunities, etc. So networking at the right events, through social media, through thought leadership articles, blogs, etc. These type of networking aspects need to be taken care of, because at the end of the day, unless you go out to the market and tell the market, this is what we do and this is what we can do for you, people might not really know, right? So networking, sales, a big part of your day. Building a brand, as I said, when you are a consultant or any employee in any organization, you not only need to build your own personal brand. When I say personal, I mean personal/professional brand. So you as a person, how are you being perceived by the client? Are you someone who is dependable? Are you someone who is quick to learn, quick to adapt, etc.? And is that the brand image that you have for the client? Because tomorrow, if you change organizations, your brand should remain the same. So tomorrow, if you change an organization, let's say to a different firm or a different organization, the client ideally should follow you, because the client is wants to be loyal, the client wants convenience and comfort, and the client will ideally say that, okay, if you are going to this organization, then I want to bring my business to this organization because you are there in that organization. So that's the power of brand and loyalty that you need to build with your client. And obviously, when you build a brand for yourself, it directly impacts your employer's brand as well. So me in EY is a brand. So Jocelyn in EY, or X person in a different organization, that's the brand we need to sell, because ultimately they all come together, and we all build that holistic brand of selling the right product, the right service, the right solution in the way that the client wants. And finally, all of this remains. And the final thing that you may want to consider as a employee, as a working professional, is to be continuously learning, keep up to date with all your educational certifications. So sustainability is such a dynamic industry, as you know, that there might be some things happening in Europe, in the US, etc. And obviously with social media, there's a lot of data that you have at the tip of your fingers, but it's also important to get yourself certified, to ensure that, the other day, one of my employee was asking me that if I do this certification, what's in it for me? It's not going to help me get another job. But actually, if you do these certifications, not only will you learn, but it also shows a kind of mindset of being proactive and ensuring that people around know that you are someone who wants to learn, who is curious, a very important skill to have, and is keeping abreast of all the latest regulations, the latest news, etc., within your domain. Right, so this is typically what a life of a consultant looks like. Any questions so far?
I don't see any hands raised yet.
yeah.
Anybody going? Yeah.
Any comments, any disagreements that no, this is not what my friend in consultancy talks about? Any comments?
I think I'm not seeing any hands raised yet. Not yet. Disha, do you see any hands raised yet?
No, I don't.
No, but I don't think we'll disagree, Joss. I agree.
It looks all very smooth as per this slide, but as I said, consultancy is a very, very fast paced world. There is a certain kind of thick skinned and adaptability that you need to have in consulting. I have this opinion because I have learned this on the job, because I have also been in consultancy for about a year and a half, and maybe there's some consultancy experience I've had before. But it's a very, very important skill set and a mindset really to have, to be able to adapt, to be able to learn on the job, learn quickly on the job, because a lot of the things, the concepts of sustainability, etc., are new to us as well. These are very niche topics that even globally, things like net zero, decarbonization in within this particular sector and this particular technology, these are very, very new concepts that we are all grappling with. But the idea is that how do you ensure that you are giving the best bang for the buck for the client, while learning, and also ensuring that the client is also happy and the client is confident of what you are providing them. So these are some of the important skills that you may have to think about
I
when
think
you
we have one question, Jocelyn. We have one person, Darshana here, who's from the cohort, has raised her hand. Is it a good time, Jocelyn? Can we take
Sure.
one
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
Okay. Darshana, over to you.
Right. Yes, actually, Jocelyn, you can answer this at the end of the session as well if you're comfortable. But actually, I've practiced as an architect for some time, and I understand a bit of consultancy. And so, coming from that background, there is something that actually confused me when I was beginning my career there, and even now when I'm transitioning. How does one how does one actually figure out how much to charge? Because that is something that people don't very easily talk about. It's something that actually people are not also kind of teaching you anywhere. Of course, I mean, one can discuss with one's peers and things like that, but just being an employer at one of the big fours is one thing. But if you are starting off as as an individual who will then end up collaborating with different people and organizations, you can take this question up now, or even later. I'm comfortable with
No,
either.
happy to answer this. So I think obviously commercials is something that is a hot topic always, right? Because most of the times your client, sadly, I feel like in India, the client is looking at how much money they can save rather than the quality of the work that they are getting, right? So I may think that as me as my company, or EY, or whichever company, I can give the best possible quality of work, and this is my commercial, my fees to you. But the client, just wants to do a checkbox kind of thing, and therefore they will just be like, I want to do this in 50% of what you have suggested. So I think this is always a little bit of a dance that you need to do. First, you need to be convinced of the quality of work that you provide. And it's important that as an individual you need to build a certain kind of portfolio or certain kind of credential and credibility of yours for yourself, because there are clients who will be like, I want this person only, I don't care how much she charges. Obviously there will be some negotiation here and there, but it's important to build that brand for yourself, that I know that, let's say, for example, I know that if I buy a Apple or a Samsung, this is the kind of product I will get. And I'm okay to pay that much money because I know that I will get a certain kind of product, right? So that is one aspect of it. Second aspect of it is obviously when you start, you may not have that, privilege to say no to a client. You can't be like, okay, this is my fees, you take it or leave it, right? So then that's where the dance happens, where you need to build a kind of rapport with the client to say that, okay, what is your budget? Give me a number, give me a figure, give me a range, and I will try my best to fit in that range. But there will be certain things that I may not be able to provide, like certain scope of work, certain deliverables I may not be able to provide in that range. Are you okay with that? So that's the kind of negotiation skill that you will have to build with the client, whoever is paying you, whoever you are selling to. So I think this is, see, I mean, the thing is, Darshana, like, even at EY level, right? There are, I would say, 50% of proposals that we lose based on commercials alone, because competition is so fierce right now that, and we know how the clientele works. So undercutting on cost is the most popular reason why people, we don't get a proposal or we don't get a project, right? So though that is the name of the game, and therefore you have to build your brand. You need to build a rapport with the client. The client needs to be confident that, okay, I am okay to pay X amount of rupees, but I know for sure at the end of the day this is the output I will get. So that's on you, because that's what you can control. And so, and all you can do is change and work on things that you can control, build your portfolio, build your credibility, do your networking, because sometimes you never know what comes up, right? So in during networking events, you may find a client who is, sometimes you get lucky that a client doesn't know what the range is, so you kind of get lucky that, okay, this person will take whatever I, so that's the kind of luck factor that comes in as well. But I mean, there is no straight answer. uh, but you are just going to, as an individual, as a freelancer, you will have to, dhakke maar ke you will kind of learn that this is what it is. And on the other side, the client will also know that this is what I am paying for. I hope that answers your question in a roundabout way.
No, that was helpful. Thank you.
We have one more question. Jocelyn, is it a good time to take it?
Yeah, please.
Ishita, would you like to go ahead?
Yes. So from my understanding in consulting, we give a strategy or an advice, but consultants are very rarely involved in the implementation part of it. If correct me if I'm wrong, specifically in sustainability consulting, because these plans are generally very long term that the company has to follow it. So how do consultants generally measure the success of their plan or strategy? Is it just that the client is happy with it, then it's okay, but like how do you measure that?
Client is happy is the ultimate goal for us. Okay, we, that's the that's the dream scenario for us. If client, whatever we give, if the client is happy, that's what all we need from them. But I would say, Ishita, in terms of implementation, I think right now within sustainability, we are getting into that stage where implementation support requires more money. So we are getting into the stage where the client is willing to pay us more money for implementation support, hand holding them, and doing all of that stuff. And also, what the client is doing is they are building a team. So while we are helping them at the phase one level, at the phase two level, in the background, they are also building a team internally, such that when the phase one, phase two, and the consultant goes out of the picture, the implementation can be done. Because as consultants, we are also building capacity of the company, of the client as well, right? So when the implementation phase comes, let's say phase 3 is implementation, our job is also to build their capacity to be able to take on that implementation kind of tasks. So, but yes, there are certain clients that are getting into the implementation support from the consultancy side, but just purely from a strategy point of view, how do we gauge success? So we will gauge success if the client is obviously, if whatever deliverable that we share with them, it fits within their overall business objectives. If it is something that they say that, okay, this is, I can see that this X amount of rupees is what I can save because of this strategy. I can see for sure, and because see, a client will not just go on what the consultant says. They will also have their own resources, right? So they will ask their networks, their resources, that if I do this particular thing, do you think I can get X number of customers? So if all of that fits into their own narrative that they have built, and their narrative that they are learning from their peers and their networks, I think that's a good success. And ultimately for us, if they implement that strategy, and if they say that, okay, because of this strategy, because of this idea, we were able to shave off this much amount from our we didn't have to we invested this much amount, and this is the kind of savings we could show, and all of that. So that's essentially the success factor. But just to keep it very simple, Ishita, if the client is happy, and I would say 70-80% of the times they are happy, but 20% of the times they may be happy, but they are not very vocal about it, or there is something that they are not happy about. So if they are happy, that's the goal. Like, that's all, we strive for essentially as consultants.
Got it. And a follow-up question, not on success, but how long are generally engagements in sustainability consulting?
So it depends on the project, right? So in my one of my following slides, you will see the type of projects that we typically do. So if it is a reporting, if it's a regulatory kind of thing, so there is a fixed timeline that by March or by June this needs to be out from a regulatory point of view. Then there are certain things which take a year. So, for example, if it involves strategizing around a company's product, so new product opportunities. So, here what happens and why it takes longer is that it's not just a conversation with the sustainability department. We have to go out of that bubble and talk to their product heads, their business heads. Most of the times they are like, "Arey, why do we need to do this? Our business is running fine. Like, why do we need this new opportunity? What is sustainability? Why do we, what is this new hassle that we need to do?" So one of our jobs is to convince them that, okay, if you do this product, and because some other of your peers have done it and this is the success they've had, if we convince them, then the next phase is that how do we actually make strategize around a new product launch for that company. So that usually typically takes about 8 months to a year. But there will be certain things where, like a strategy or something that will take, maybe 3 or 4 months, because here we are working with the sustainability people, but also here we are talking directly with the leadership. And typically what we found is, the leadership, the board of the company, the CEO, the chairman, generally are very, very open. I think that's always a good mindset to have, because they are not closed. So if you will see that a lot of the mid management in corporates, in companies, they are the ones who, like, why do we need to do this? They are very closed about newer things. But the higher up you go, right, a CEO or a chairperson or a executive director or a non-executive board director, etc., they are the ones who have the ability to look forward, have that forward looking attitude and personality, and therefore they will not shut down or dismiss a conversation quickly. So when we do a strategy project or a proposal, it takes about 3-4 months, and here it takes 3-4 months. It's relatively short because the leadership, usually we have a buy-in from them. So this is typically what we do, and our business runs around the concept of annuity, right? So annuity means every year, annually, are you able to renew your contract with the client? So normally there will be a contract for 1 year, sometimes it's 2, 3 years, etc. But if the client comes back to us on a year-on-year basis, that's a success for us, because that means that the client is definitely getting some benefit from our engagement.
Thank you. I think that was
Thank
very
you.
helpful.
Yeah. Any other questions? I don't see any raised hands, so I will quickly go, being mindful of time. Yeah. So what you see on the screen are some typical skills. I would say soft skills. There's some sort of mindset, some sort of personality that you need. When you join consultancy. So see, the first thing that you need to know is, as a consultant, you are being paid to make your client's life easy. So what is it that you bring to the table is the biggest question, right? That's the elephant in the room that needs to be discussed. So either you are a generalist. So I think at the start of the of this call, we were talking about what is it that you bring to the table. So either you are a generalist, right? You know something about everything, and therefore your role is to bring the subject matter experts together. So you are a generalist, or you are a subject matter expert. So you could be someone who is has expertise in a sector. So you could be an expert in hard to abate sectors like mining or coal or that kind of stuff, right? Or you could have build an expertise around decarbonization and net zero. You could there could be newer skills that you may want to learn. One is around climate risk modeling. What is the new technologies that are coming up from, let's say, green hydrogen is being talked about, offshore wind is a new sector that's being talked about. Do you have that technical and technological expertise to bring to the table to make the client's life easy? There are other nuances and other aspects and domains around health and safety. So some of the sectors which are very labor intensive, where there's a higher risk of fatalities or accidents, etc. Can you consult the client on how to make their operations safer? Health and safety then becomes an important thing. And then finally, I mean, this is obviously an illustrative, but financial background also is super helpful, because keep in mind that this is a sector that, as I said, it's always evolving. There's always something new that's happening, and investors and companies are always looking for the next big thing to invest in or give money to or do R&D in. So when you have a financial background, you are best placed to do some of these market projections that you can do. The total addressable market. So TAM is a concept that is very, very popular now. So if the investor comes to you or a company comes to you and says that, okay, I want to explore, let's say, the idea of offshore wind or green hydrogen, tell me what is the addressable market. So if I put X amount of rupees, X crores of rupees in this particular project or this plant which works around green hydrogen, what is the return on investment that I will get? What is the pipeline of customers I will get? This all comes with having a financial background. So the first two aspects is all around the technical side of things, and all the others that you see, I'm happy to share this slide as well with the team, is more about your mindset. So how are you able to manage people and your tasks? So when I say people, it means your people who are junior to you, who are looking up to you for guidance, and also the people who are senior to you. So your managers, your directors, your partners, etc. So how do your ability firstly to switch between different projects, as I said, that's a very, very key role. I think that's when a lot of team members kind of struggle, because their question is, okay, if for the first half of the day or first 2 hours, if I'm doing something on health and safety, how am I supposed to switch to do something around climate risk modeling? So that ability to switch between different projects at short notice becomes very, very crucial. Traveling, obviously, adaptability to different environments. You need to be very, very, as I said, adaptable, flexible, agile. things happen at short notice. The client will call you, can you come to this site? There is an incident, can you come and take a look at it? You need to be available. Obviously, work-life balance is an important concept. It's something that all companies struggle with. But if you have a conversation with your manager that, hey, I have to go to this site visit and therefore I can't do the X number of projects that I have, I think that's a conversation you need to do. But in general, adaptability, agility becomes an important skill set to have. Communication, presentation, because as I said, presentation to the client, selling to the client what you have worked on, what you have prepared, and what you worked hard on. I think those are important skill sets for you to have, because at the end of the day, the client wants you to help you, right? So whatever reports, assessment, articles you will provide, if you can't sell it to the client is not going to be happy. Time management, organization skills, super duper important. Delegation is important here. I think a lot of people struggle with, because especially when you are slightly more early stage professional, you've been told what to do, right? But sometimes the art of delegation is also to say that, okay, if I have X amount of hours in a day, and if I have X amount of projects to be done, can someone else pick it up for me, or take that up for me? And if there is bandwidth with the other person, they should be able to take that up, obviously in conversation with your managers. Being calm in the face of relentless pressures, I think this is not a consultancy skill set, is generally, as a corporate professional you'll have to do. De-escalation, a lot of times, as I said, clients might be unhappy, the clients don't agree with what you have presented or what you have shared. Sometimes the opinions that we give are in contradiction to what they are hearing from the market. So how do you de-escalate it? How do you bring them on your side? How do you ensure that everything, that even if there is a escalation, even if there is a challenging situation, how can we move on quickly and ensure that the client is still happy? Managing client expectations. So sometimes, especially in India, everyone wants everything by EOD, or at the immediately, and all of that, right? So how do you build that rapport with the client to say that, look, you have given this task to me right now, I will not be able to give it to you as of now, but please be rest assured that I can give you a good quality of work maybe in 2 days time. That's my normal tat, right? So how do you balance that client expectations? Problem solving, obviously an important skill set. And I think lastly, what we kind of miss as sustainability professionals is to build the non-sustainability expertise as well. Because I think the world in which we live in, we need to build that holistic experience around, what are the newer things. So AI, legal, regulation. So bringing in and learning all of that together becomes an important skill set to learn when you are a consultant, because you're not just solving one problem, you are also maybe thinking ahead and saying this to the client, that maybe tomorrow this is a new regulation that might come in. How are you prepared? Do you need our help? So this becomes a new opportunity for us to work with the client. So ultimately, look, whatever said and done, a good consultant is someone who knows their client better than anyone in the market, right? So that's the holy grail, where the client says that this person, this company knows me better than anyone. I want to give my money to this person, and do this in a way that you actually find it thrilling, you find passion about. You need to love what you do, because some of the the timelines, the time that we spend is sometimes during peak season, it can be a bit grueling. And therefore, if you don't love what you do, and if you don't feel the kind of happiness that, okay, I managed to solve a problem for the client, if you don't get that feeling, then things will get difficult for you on a daily day-to-day basis. Typical projects in sustainability consulting, as I just kind of alluded to earlier, typically, there is this whole element of regulatory compliance. If I had more time, I would have kind of asked you all, what do you think are the newer reporting regulations, etc. But I'll keep it I won't keep it interactive right now because of paucity of time. But in general, with the regulators, whether it is SEBI, whether it is RBI, they keep coming up with expectations from their companies, from their supervised entities, etc., on certain reporting requirements. So regulatory reporting is a big chunk of what we do as consultants and how we help the clients with, because these are all public disclosures and they want to be very sure of the quality of the reports that they do. Strategy is an important aspect. So building an overarching strategy, it could be building a net zero strategy or decarbonization strategy. Those elements become important aspects of our typical projects that we do. Reporting, so any kind of public disclosure that doesn't have a regulatory element, where we have a little bit more free hand to build a narrative to for the client, for their external stakeholders. Now public disclosures, impact reporting, these kind of things become very important, because some of these companies that are listed, or maybe some that are non-listed, is unlisted as well, they get rated by ESG rating agencies, right? And these ESG rating agencies look at these public reports to rate some of these companies. And if a company gets a poor rating on ESG, that's obviously a cause for concern. So we help them on the public disclosures. We ask the questions, tell them that, okay, these are some of the things that you currently don't have. You may need to build a policy around it. You may need to disclose some indicators around it, etc. Due diligence assurance is nothing but whatever the company has reported. So either we do the reporting, or we do the assurance, right? So we can't do both because there is a conflict. So wherever the company has a report and they need an assurance from a third party provider, from an independent point of view, we do the assurance as well. Then there are aspects around climate risk assessment. So certain companies, especially on the financial institution level, which have large portfolios, where they have like X amount of thousands of crores in, let's say, invested in a state that is earthquake prone. So what is the kind of climate risk exposure that they have, or their investments have, because of this particular climate risk? Then things around market research, landscape assessment. As I said, investors come to us and they say that this is a technology or this is a sector that we want to explore. Can you tell us what is the market? Who are the customers going to be? What is our competition doing, etc.? Give us the whole, essentially the information pack around what's happening in this sector. We also help companies fundraise. So companies that are looking at green bonds or looking at sustainability linked bonds, etc., we help them in the fundraising activity. Companies that are on the verge of getting listed, or pre-IPO, post-IPO, we help them as well. And also on product strategy, right? So if a company is looking to build new products, build a new customer segment, let's say affordable lending or affordable housing or green mortgage, for example. So that's how we help them strategize around products. And I will just quickly go through the career trajectory that we typically have in a consultancy the world. And these designations change from firm to firm, but typically you start with being an intern. You move towards consultants, being a consultant or an analyst, senior consultant, manager, senior manager, director, partner. So partner is the kind of the ultimate goal when you are in a consultancy firm, obviously. Usually, typically, the gap between each of these designations is 3 years, 3 to 4 years, depending on how you perform. Sometimes, if you are really good, in exceptional cases, there is something called as accelerated promotion. So you become eligible to get that as well. And ultimately, what decides your promotion or what decides your trajectory in the consultancy field is that, if I, as a project manager, I'm able, once I get a client, if I'm able to say that, hey, I can give this entire project to this person and I don't have to be involved. It's completely hands off at this point for me, and I need to be involved only when the client wants me or if there is an escalation. If I can reach that scenario or that situation with my team member, and they can single-handedly handle all of the communication, interactions, projects, everything, then that's a very, very clear indicator that this person is ready for a promotion to the next level. Typically, who are some of the firms? Big Four. So I'm sure you are familiar with these firms. Big Four is EY, KPMG, Deloitte, PwC. MBBs are the McKinseys, Bain, and the BCGs of the world. There are certain consultancies that are technical in nature, so they focus very, very on very, very technical aspects. So there's organizations like ERM that do due diligence, environmental impact assessments, very, very scientific way of doing some of these things. There are some boutique firms like GIST Impact. They look at, assigning value to nature. So there's some boutique firms that clients may be interested in, and there's obviously others like a BDO, Unicus, etc. So there's a whole host of consultancy firms that are there in India, and more popping up. Some of the boutique firms, smaller firms, etc. So there's a whole lot of opportunities that if you choose to specialize in a certain field or you choose to be a generalist, etc., you would, there's a lot of opportunities. And the good thing about sustainability, and I've said this in general as well, like the good thing about sustainability is it's a very, very hot uh, industry, always jobs available, especially if you are an early stage professional. So many internships, so many consultants, analysts kind of roles all over the country. So yeah, I mean, keep an eye out always. LinkedIn is obviously your main person to kind of help you find some of these jobs. But yeah, so I'll stop there. I know that I'm running a little bit too late, but yeah, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Deshna, do you see any hands raised? I do not as of now, but I was just going to flag that, Justin, we might take one screenshot image with the cohort in it. Yeah.
Sure. I also had a fun slide. Maybe if nobody has a question, I'll just explain that fun slide to you guys. So I just wanted to. There are certain fun jargons that like if you come in this field, you will know what you will hear this quite often. So scope creep. And I think the moment you use some of these terms in the consultancy field, you will people will perceive you as that this person knows what they are doing, and you will fit right in. So scope creep is one of those things where the client will give you a scope of work, and ultimately and inevitably the scope will increase somehow. Money will not increase, but the scope will increase. So that's scope creep. White space is essentially, what are the market opportunities that nobody within the market has looked at. So how can we get into that market, into that white space, and help the client capitalize on that? Blue sky is, typically if there is a target that your partner gives you, that let's say 10 crores is your target, and you have visibility from your pipeline for let's say 7 or 8 crores, then the remaining 2 crores or 3 crores is the blue sky. So you need to think about how can you meet that blue sky gap. EOD, I think you all know, end of day. End of day is always subjective. It could be 6 p.m., it could be 12 p.m. It's very, very subjective. I don't think anyone has a definition around what EOD really means. Circle back, I know you heard that. It's a very funny thing. I always laugh when people use this, but I'll circle back to you, I think, is a very funny jargon. And bandwidth, obviously an oft repeated term, and everyone uses it. The client uses it, your team uses it, everyone uses it. So be careful about this particular term. But if you use any of these jargons, I think it's a short way of you to be perceived as, okay, this person knows what they are talking about. So I'll end there. And if anyone has any questions or any new jargons that they might want to discuss, happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Thank you.
When is the photo? Is the photo done?
I was just about to ask Deshna, Sanjay, can you help us take one or two screenshots? You can just give us maybe like a 1, 2, 3 countdown and we can do that. And if we can have everybody's cameras on, whoever it's possible for.
Yeah, I can do that. We'll wait for a second for everyone to turn their cameras on.
Okay.
Everyone's ready. Okay, smile everyone. 1, 2, 3.
We got it?
No, just hold for a minute. Let me
Sure.
grab all the photo. Yeah, got it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jocelyn.
Thank you, everyone, and all the best for your career. And feel free to add me on LinkedIn if you have any questions, etc. I'm happy to answer. And thanks again, and have a great rest of your evening. Thanks. Bye.
So much.